Boom. Ka-chow. But yeah, hey guys, so this is Carlos, and back and behind the scenes right there, that's my friend Kong.
Hi.
Yeah, and basically what we're gonna be doing is like we're gonna be talking about a movie that we watched a few weeks ago that we think is pretty hype. It's called The Farewell. Basically, the film starts out with the with Chinese characters appearing on screen, and it translates to "Don't tell her." But how do you say it again? Because you're the Chinese speaking person here.
It's 别告诉她. It means don't tell her.
Yeah, see, that sounds much cooler. If I said it, I sound like fucking Yankee. And basically, it shows like don't the Chinese characters of "Don't tell her." After the title sequence, we then see multiple shots of an MRI scan, and it's establishing that it's a hospital. Afterwards, we see an elderly woman who goes into a room and has a consultation with what we assume is a doctor, and afterwards, it cuts to a shot in which the elderly woman is leaning against the wall with some papers, clear, and it has there's a close-up shot basically. Yeah, there's a close-up shot of her expressions, and it's basically saying or communicating to us that she is very stressed. She's clearly in distress, and she's contemplating about something. Assumingly, the results are probably bad news. We don't really know yet. So, but we'll obviously see later on. Next, it cuts to the waiting room, and it's specifically with an elderly woman, a different elderly woman in this case, and she's on the phone talking to someone named Billy, and they're speaking in Mandarin. And we can glance from immediately out of the conversation is that they are grandmother and granddaughter, because she just says that she's she says grandma. So, they're talking, saying how things are going. And then a little into the conversation, she then asks like, "Hey grandma, where are you?" Like, "Oh, I can hear a bunch of stuff in the background." And she's like, "Ah, yeah, no worries, it's pretty good." And it's like, and we're just I'm just checking something out. So just been seeing like doctor to see if what's up. And she's like, "Okay, good luck with that." And they hang up. And afterwards, the elderly woman we saw in the first shot, she comes to the one that was just on the phone, and from what we can immediately get from this conversation is that they're sisters, and she says like, "Oh, your results are fine. Whatever this was, your diagnosis was fine. The thing was benign, so we can probably imply that it was some kind of like medical scare of something that could have been pretty serious. So that's good. Afterwards, it cuts to New York, and basically, because on the way home, when she gets home, basically she basically meets her parents, and they have this little kind of banter, in a very, if you don't know, stereotypical Asian type of parent-kid banter, where it's about when you're moving out, when you're gonna get married, or when you're gonna find a job, and stuff like that. And so that happens, and she goes to her room, and it's in the dark, and she finds a letter actually, and in that letter she basically opens it, and it says, basically, "I'm sorry, but your application to the Guggenheim Museum has been rejected." So we can apply like she's an artist. She probably loves something like writing or painting or something like that. We don't know. We don't quite know yet. And then at the same time, she also sees like on the side of her room a bird. We don't know how it got in, but like the shot kind of lingers on this bird for a while. We don't know what it means. She's looking at it and she's a bit confused. So Billy walks into her parents' bedroom, and she sees her dad like sitting at the edge of the bed, staring into space, but it's shot from behind, so we can't really see his expression, but we can infer that something is not quite right. So she goes to her dad and asks like, "Hey, are you okay? Is there something wrong or something I should know about?" And Billy's dad goes and says, your grandmother is dying. She has stage 4 cancer, and it's untreatable. And he goes on to say that the whole family is going to go fly to China to see her and spend time together, all under the excuse that Billy's cousin is getting married. Obviously, Billy is really not happy about the news, pretty distraught, and she goes and asks, well, when are we leaving? And they, to her surprise, say, you're not coming, and actually that the family decided that they don't want you there. She asks why, and she says, her mom says, well, you are not very good at hiding your emotions, and you are definitely not going to be able to handle this, because we're not going to tell her about her condition.
Tell who about her condition?
Oh, well, sorry. The family said, you're right. Yeah, sorry about that. Her family, like the whole family agreed that they're not going to tell her true diagnosis. They're just going to act like everything's fine in order for her not to stress.
So they're not going to tell the grandma?
No,
okay.
They're not going to tell the grandma. Sorry. Yeah. Using a lot of pronouns. Yeah. So the whole family is not going to tell the grandma that she has cancer. And Billy is pretty confused by this, and why not? And she keeps asking, why not tell her? And her parents just say, it's just part of the culture. We don't try and tell the bad news to our family members as a way of not providing them any kind of burden or stress, so that we carry it ourselves. And she still doesn't get it, but she goes along. She doesn't say anything. So eventually, afterwards, they leave. Her parents leave, go fly off to China, and Billy, it then goes into this montage of Billy just going about her life as if trying to go about her life like everything's fine. Like, she goes to her job, she goes to have a birthday with someone, but the whole time, as we can read on her expression, that she's feeling pretty uncomfortable with this fact. And not being there. So after this small montage, it cuts to a scene of her in the airport about to fly to China. It takes that flight. Afterwards, it cuts to the next part. So she lands in China, and the second she walks out the door, there's a bunch of taxi drivers going up to her. And it's like, oh yeah, hey, here's go, come take a ride with me. Go here. I have a good fare. I have the best fare. It's cheapest. And from what you said, it's because they think she's a foreigner or a tourist, right?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I have no idea.
Possibly, but that would make sense actually, considering it's a bit advanced to say this, but there's a big theme of this movie is talking about feeling outside of your own culture, but I'll get into that a bit later. But voice crack. And then but yeah. So, after that, she takes a taxi, and she passes by a bunch of buildings, and there's a lot of shots that linger on these specific sites, and at least to me, that always felt like it was implying that either they seem familiar or strange or alien. So, after which she arrives at the apartment, if I remember correctly. Yeah, or at least the apartment complex in which her family stays. She knocks on the door. And then she says, oh, it's me. It's Billy. And just oh, whoa, what the heck? Okay, so she knocks on the door of her family's apartment, and someone answers, and then he said, oh, Mr. Lee, it's me, it's Billy. And I was like, oh, Billy, oh, what are you doing here? Oh, wow, please get in, it's cold. So she comes in, and she walks into her family in the general dining hall, preparing for dinner. And everyone is just oh, shocked. And then it was Billy, whoa, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were coming. And she's like, hi, Grandma, nice to see you, love to see you again. And she looks obviously kind of sad because she knows what's true, the what is called the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And then her grandma asked, what's wrong, Billy? You look very sad. And then everyone's like giving her the big stare. She's like, "You better fucking not. You better not say, or you better not hint any kind of expression that's like that. There's anything bad." So, after like a long, maybe like a minute or like a minute pause or something, she's like, "I'm fine. I'm fine. It's just the jet lag. I'm just a bit tired from the flight, but I'm happy to see you too." And so she's like, "Okay, yeah, well, don't worry. Just put your stuff down. Like, we'll just get you settled in." So basically, after that, Billy goes into the kitchen, wants to help out with the kitchen with cooking dinner, and her mom is part of that. She's cooking, so she runs up and hugs her a bit, like, "Oh, happy to see me," and she's not in the mood for it.
So the mom's not in the mood.
Oh yeah, she's pretty pissed about her coming over, and it's like, oh, like, hey, like, back off, like, she says like, oh, it's hot, but she's clearly not in the mood to be hugged. And then like she's like, "Don't worry, mom, let's see, I'm fine, like, it's all good." And then her mom says like, "Do you use the credit card to get here, right?" Just like, yeah, basically. It's like
Credit card?
credit card, yeah.
Oh.
No, because she was like because the whole, like, there was also like a bit of an undercurrent, like, that she couldn't always had to rely on her parents for money and stuff, so implying that, and she kind of, and so yeah, because of that, Billy kind of confirmed like, "Yeah, I used the credit card." So yeah, exactly. So just here to bring this to the table and stuff. So yeah, kind of a bit of a tense moment right there, because clearly it wasn't in the plan, and it could ruin some future things in regards to the bad news. Yeah, so afterwards, they're having dinner, and the whole time, Billy is kind of silent, in a sense, because she's still wrestling with the fact that she shouldn't tell her and act like everything is shouldn't tell the grandma and not act like everything, and still act like everything is okay. And the grandma is, she ain't no fool. She's noticing that stuff. Like, she can clearly see like Billy is not eating a lot, and she's still looks sad. She's like, "Billy, you're not eating a lot. Oh, what's, like, you sure you're okay? You good, fam?" And Billy's like, "Yeah, no, don't worry, grandma. I don't know, had some food on the plane, I think. Or basically, I'm just not quite hungry right at the moment." So she's like, "Okay." And okay, so she brushes that, but yeah, okay. So, after she brushes past that topic of the conversation, then her grandma just jumps straight into the wedding, saying like, "I'm excited, like, we're gonna pull out all the stops for my grandson, because this is such a special occasion. It's great that all the family is here, coincidentally." Coincidentally, everyone is here. And so, like, we got the best place, we got the best chef preparing lobster. Like, it's just gonna be fantastic, and I'm gonna make sure it's like one to remember. So she goes on that, and then afterwards, like, "Oh, Billy, we set you up in a nearby hotel, and it's gonna be great. It's like newly refurbished. It's like a brand new hotel. You're gonna love it." So afterwards, it cuts straight into Billy and her uncle, one of her uncles, on the way there, walking past like a night market or so. And basically, he says the whole time he's just talking about, "So you probably know about the illness, and so you better know that we're not gonna say, and you better not say anything." And then she's like, "I know." And then, "So you better not say." "I know." "You better not say." "I know." "Yes, I know." "I got it." Because it's like, it's funny because it operates like twofold, where it's like, obviously, she's very much like an outsider to these things, so it's like, you better not tell. And also, they already say that she's like a bad liar. Mm-hmm. She's like, her emotions basically give away she ain't got no poker face. And so they're saying like, you better, like, just keep with it. Mm-hmm. Because they kind of don't trust her in that sense, which is, as we've seen from the last few scenes, kind of true. Yeah. So, but the whole time for her, it's like, "I got it. We got it." So afterwards, next scene, she checks into the hotel, and the whole time, and she doesn't take the elevator, Like, turns out like they're repairing like, the elevator, I think, because she has to take like the stairs to like the 7 floors or something like that. So they're bringing up like the suitcase, and the bellhop is like making some small talk because for some reason like every single background character in this movie can tell that she's not from China.
Oh, sure.
She can tell that she's not from China. She's like, so where are you coming from? I was like, the U.S. Oh, that's cool. So like, what you doing here? I'm attending a wedding. Oh, so cool. And then even like you know, they admit her Chinese like isn't that good, but the thing is like they keep also asking her a lot about America and stuff, and then that's the whole time on the way to the room. When they get to her room, like before what do you call it? Before he like sees her off, he keeps asking like, so what's better, American culture or Chinese culture? And she's like, they're just different. I wouldn't say one's better than the other. But then she says like, but what do you think though? Nothing much. It's just different, really. Like you can't compare it. So you sure? So like, and like yeah, so like not pretty different. So it's like okay, well have a good night then and stuff like that. Afterwards, there's a jump cut into like a few hours later. Like she's trying to sleep, but it's clearly like very noisy, both outside and then like there's this ventilation that's very noisy. And the whole time to me, like this scene was just so funny because they were saying like, it's the new hip hotel. And it's still like under construction. She has to take the stairs. And then like her room is like very noisy and stuff. So like that whole scene was quite funny. So basically, Billy goes to spend time with her grandmother doing Tai Chi in the morning. It's a very cute, very endearing little scene. Like it shows like how close their bond is and stuff. Like I think it's Tai Chi though. Honestly, even you don't know if it's Tai Chi.
I don't. I think it's breathing exercise, but I have no idea.
It's breathing exercises, but it just reminds me of like when old people do Tai Chi.
Yes, it does.
in the park, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use of the vibe.
Exactly. So they do that for a few minutes. It's really cute, very endearing. And afterwards, it cuts to back into the apartment. And that's when the last few relatives who are part of the story, like they come in and they arrive, they're preparing for lunch. And while they're preparing for lunch, Billy's grandmother goes to see Billy's mom and asks if Haiyan, her son or Billy's dad, is okay because his face is all puffy or swollen. He doesn't look fine. And then the mom says like, she's fine. He's fine. Sorry, he's fine. No worry about it. And then, but then the grandmother follows up. Is he drinking again? And then she just like, no, he's not. That's fine. Or just brushes it off. And then like, just make sure. He doesn't know his limits sometimes. Basically, just kind of doing like the nagging grandma thing, which is kind of endearing, but also for those Asian audiences who probably knows how it feels to be nagged on.
Yeah.
It feels that it's also kind of annoying.
Between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law.
Oh yeah. Oh, that could be especially bad. Yeah. I've heard they can get quite bad.
Yeah, it can get quite toxic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in this scene, it's pretty. How would you think this scene looks like too?
I would say the same. Like same what you're saying. Like it's tense. It's a little bit tense because in some ways, like you can tell their interactions a bit stilted. Because it seems like, obviously it's showing that the grandma is very hands-on, which is kind of a traditional thing to do, like very hands-on with their kids and what they do, even though they're like, I don't know how old he is, they don't say, but obviously like past middle age or so. So even despite that, she's still like nonstop, like, yeah, I hope he's doing this. He better not do that. Make sure he doesn't do this. Which is, it's both endearing, but also can be suffocating. So, yeah, that's the same way we feel, I think. Yeah. So afterwards, the scene, it cuts to lunch, with the whole family around again. It's like the traditional kind of table with what's the thing in the middle again? The one you spin around?
I don't remember.
They have a name for it, but I forgot it. But I'm sure the comments will tell me or something.
Yeah.
And so they have that. They're having lunch, and the grandma speaks up and says to the whole family, "Look, I'm glad all of you guys have arrived, and are so happy to see me. But like, let's not forget that we are all here for one real special occasion. It is my grandson's wedding." And then she goes on to say, that make sure that when anyone asks about it, we're not gonna say that they've only been dating for like 3 months, which is because well, the idea is like it looks kind of bad or implies that she's pregnant or she got impregnated really early, which one of the family members brings up like listen, grandma, like Aiko, the wife, is not pregnant. And then she's like, yeah, no, it doesn't really matter though. It's like it's all about the appearance, the mianzi, as they say.
So like Aiko is the cousin's
wife, yeah.
And they are getting married.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they are getting married. And and afterwards the grandmother says, "Okay, well, later on I'm gonna go check out the venue and ask them about the food and especially the lobster. She loving that lobster." And then so Billy pops up, says, "Hey, like I can go with you." And she's like, "Huh, what you gonna do? You ain't gonna do nothing." Basically, she's like, "You're not gonna be much of help." Silly, stupid child.
Yeah.
Which she says like throughout the movie. Actually, it's very endearing, even though she calls Billy stupid many times. But yeah, it's more of a cultural thing for I think Western audiences. But so then, her son, Billy's dad, like the grandma's son, Billy's dad goes and says like, "Hey, I can help you," and the grandma says like, "No, you should rest. Like you don't look well." Like building off of that last conversation that the grandmother had with Billy's mom, and then afterwards, then the uncle speaks up like, "Oh, don't worry. Like I can go with you. I can do it with you." So they go. So then directly cuts into like her asking the grandmother asking the host, seems like the venue host, about all of the drinks and make sure like they're all as ordered, all as she requested, and everything seems fine up to the goddamn lobster. and she like basically like, "What? But I asked this. I was on the phone and you said you can do lobster." And the venue's manager is like, "No, I'm sorry, we only do crab." It's like, "No, it's not the same. We gotta do lobster, goddammit." And then she doesn't really swear, but she just says, like, we very insistent on that lobster. And she definitely gets very stressed up about it, and she has to sit down for a bit because it's taking a bit of energy out of her. So she sits down for a bit, takes a breath. It's like, "Don't worry, Ma, don't stress out too much about it." And then, so yeah, that's like the end of that scene. Okay. So afterwards, Billy and Billy's dad go to the spa, along with their auntie, who's the one who like recommends it. And during that time, Billy's dad asks Billy, "Oh, like did you hear back from the Guggenheim Museum, which is the letter that we saw earlier? We know that she got rejected, so obviously but she hides it. So the whole time she's like, no, I haven't heard back from yet." And he does the usual kind of like Asian dad thing where he keeps kind of following up like, "Oh, well, when will you hear from them? And like, are you okay with money? Can you afford this trip?" And then she's clearly like has had enough of it where she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Where it's like she just keeps brushing it off, which is very similar to like like when it comes to hiding the unpainful truth to not burden someone, similar to like how they do it with the grandmother, but that's more in the themes. And then afterwards they go each have their massages. Billy has her massage with her aunt. They both have their massages, and it involves hot coals or some hot stuff, like especially hot air. I think on the skin. I think, if I remember correctly, and it hurts her, obviously, because she's not used to that. And her aunt is like, "Get over it, suck it up." Like it's like you need a little pain to feel normal. like so for it to work. So after, and you know, as they're having that massage, Billy asks her aunt like, "Hey, don't you think we should tell Grandma about the truth?" And then she's like, why would we do that?" And Billy's like, "Well, what if she needs to like say her last goodbyes?" And she's like, and then her aunt replies, "Why would you want her to put her through that? Saying goodbye is painful, you know." So yeah, that's kind of where it ends, really. All right, so basically we got to one of the most important scenes, if probably not the most important scene in the entire movie. It's another dinner scene, but this one goes on for quite a while. So this whole scene is basically a giant conversation surrounding how people in different cultures perceive things like money, like nationality, about belonging. And because the whole time, at first, some of her Billy's family members are asking like, "Oh, Billy, like, yeah, what are you planning to do, or do you still yeah, like, what are your plans in America?" And basically, they have a whole conversation, and Billy just kind of says, like, you know, her career feels like she feels like money isn't everything. That's what she feels like. And then, like, the family members responded, like, "Yeah, maybe money can't buy everything, but it still would be pretty nice, and especially it's like really good to like, especially like it's much easier to get rich growing up in China." One of them says, and then, what do you call it? Billy's mom chimes in. "Well, if that's the case, you know, if it's so good, then why are you sending one of the younger cousins, Bao, to America for uni? You know, like, why are you looking for more opportunities there?" And it gets into, like, you know, whether or not he would or would not stay in America, whether he feels like he matches more with that or not. And they get into quite a bit of a very tense disagreement when it comes to things like basically alluding to their kids in a way like the stock market, as they say there, about whether or not like they're an investment and how they should return the favor. And because of that, and it gets into ideas of, like, in many ways, in how America and China are very different in how they perceive things like opportunities and career choices, like how they touch on Billy, how she used to play piano, and that after the move to China they didn't do it because they couldn't afford it, so they stopped playing. Afterwards, like, the aunt says, "Hey, hold on, like, we're not completely useless, like, you know, there's a lot of good things in China." And then the mom shoots back pretty quickly, like, "Well, yeah, the roast duck is pretty good, is pretty cheap as well," which is, damn,
Roasted.
like, as if there's nothing else to do. That's crazy. And then afterwards, though, then Billy's grandma chimes back in again and saying, "Look, no matter where we are or where we end up being, like, we cannot criticize China, because in the end we are all Chinese." And then Billy's dad chimes in next to her and saying, like, technically we're actually Americans." And then the uncle speaks up and says, like, "Look, no matter where I go, I'm always gonna say that I am Chinese, no matter what my passport will be." So after the uncle says that, everyone nods in agreement. However, the aunt that was just arguing with Billy's mom then just comes along and says, "If the moon is rounder outside China," but then think about, because she's replying to the uncle, she says, like, "What of your mother? Like, what about your mother? Like, she's staying in China all alone, getting old, but while all her kids are away." And that leaves a little bit of tension there, as if there wasn't already. And then the grandma was just like, all right. Yeah, look, we're all here. Let's talk about happier things." And however, the shit don't stop, and the mom just jabs back in by just saying by shooting back to the aunt, saying, like, "Well, what about you? Like, why are you still sending your kid to the United States, like, for uni?" And then she's like, "It's fine. He'll come back afterwards." And then the mom replies, Billy's mom replies, "How are you so sure, huh?" and then like, ooh, that really creates a lot of like dead air in the
So spicy.
as every yeah, spicy as fuck.
Yeah.
So spicy could come from Xinjiang. So everyone for like maybe like a few seconds is like really quiet, just eating, and then one of the uncles who hasn't spoken at all during this entire convo is asks Billy like, "So Billy, like do you still play?" I guess it's tying back to the fact that even like that pastor allowed her to play anytime she wants, but her Billy's response to him is like, "I don't play anymore," and then that's it. That's how the scene ends. That's very uncomfortable. Luckily, I don't have family feuds like that, right? Hopefully, not you either, right?
No comment. No comment.
That says a lot more than saying something.
Yes.
So after that dinner scene, pretty tense. It's a shot of the corridor in the hotel, in which everyone is leaving, and everyone's leaving slowly in the dark, and everyone has a very stoic expression on their face. And as they're leaving, it cuts into the apartment, Nai's apartment, the grandmother's apartment, and it shows that her cough is steadily like getting worse, especially. And afterwards, it cuts right to Billy in her room, taking off her shirt, undressing, and it shows, and the shot is focused on her back, which shows her the multiple irritated spots that she got during the massage treatment. And in my opinion, like after showing that one scene when it comes with grandma's coughs getting worse, signifying like the deteriorating condition, it shows I feel like the spots on her back represent the fact that she's represents the burden that she is carrying as a result of withholding the information of grandma's illness. So after that one scene, it immediately shifts to the next morning, and Billy like wakes up, and she sees on the porch of her window, she sees a bird. This is the second time we see the bird throughout. The first time was near the beginning of the movie, and afterwards she hears like people frantically talking in the hallway, so she checks out what's going on, and she opens the door and she hears her uncle talking, and she asks what's going on, and then their uncle replies, your grandma, the grandma went to the hospital, and then she turns to like the other side, and it's like her dad in the next room, and then she asks like, what happened, and her dad says, we don't know, we're not sure what happens. So afterwards, it cuts straight to like a bridge, an area, basically somewhere on the way to the hospital. And it's very frantic. It's raining. Everyone's having umbrellas. No one knows it's very much, everyone's kind of panicking of how to get to the hospital. So, and it's all in the rain. And then you were saying like it basically, like you noticed like the color of the rainbows and even the fact that it's raining, like represents their moods.
Rainbows?
Well,
umbrellas.
Umbrellas.
Yeah. So like the umbrellas, I feel like it represents the person or the mood of the situation, and then the rain as well is like very sad, like panicking as well. I'm not quite sure, but maybe it's trying to show their emotional states at that time.
Yeah, emotional state actually.
Yeah.
That's actually better.
For like from the umbrella and the raining scenes where it feels a bit more like apprehensive and sad at the same time, like, oh, what's gonna happen, is something bad happening.
It's very unpredictable, I think.
And rain is also can be quite unpredictable at times, so
exactly, like when lightning would strike almost, or like when tragedy could strike in this case, right?
And it kind of projects and reflects the feelings of a person going through sad moments. Rain is kind of one of those representations.
Exactly. No, 100%. And and you were saying like the umbrellas, you were also saying like they might represent the different
people
origins where they're from.
Maybe from different families they use different umbrellas, like the colors, because some of them have similar, like same color umbrellas and some don't. That's true.
Maybe. No, I mean,
that's
possibly.
Just my
hell, that's like all film criticism, right? It's all of it's just our opinion. But yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's still nice to like think more about it. All right. So it then cuts to the hospital in which several family members are gathered around the grandmother and asking her if she's okay, and she just kind of waves off dismissively, saying like, "I'm fine. Don't worry. Just need better pills," and so on and so forth. So then her doctor also comes around and saying, and basically she asks him like, "Oh, like just can you get me like better medication? Like I need to feel better for my grandson's wedding." And then he just like, "Oh yeah, congratulations." Then she introduces Billy. So Billy and saying like, "Oh, she came here from America." And then he's like, he takes a bit of interest. He's interested. It's like, "Oh, from America, huh?" So I used to study in the UK actually, for quite a few years. And he's like, "Oh, that's fantastic." And then he asks, "Where are you from?" And then she says like, "Oh, from New York." And she's like, "Oh, New York. I would love to go to New. I always wanted to go to New York." But she really cuts like straight to the thing where it's like, "Hey, now do you know? So that's good. But do you know about my grandmother's condition?" And then grandma like chimes like is like asking like, "What are you guys talking about?" Because we're speaking in English. I forgot to mention. So obviously she doesn't understand. And then Billy says like, "Oh yeah, no, don't worry, mom. Like he studied abroad, so he also speaks English." And then she has like this big like happy look on her face, like, "Whoa, really? You speak English? Oh, curiously, Mr. Song, the doctor, curiously, are you married?" And then he's like, "Ah, no, not yet, not yet." It's like, what? Someone so handsome, so smart, and speaks English? How, not married yet? Impossible. Impossible. And it was like, and then, what do you call it? Then basically, Billy tries to further along the conversation by saying, like, "So, like, how bad is her condition?" And then he responds, like, and the doctor responds, like, "Oh, yeah, it's very advanced." And then Billy, which is like as she's done a bit before, she asks him, "Don't you think we should tell her?" And then he says, in China, most families would prefer to keep it from them. And then he tells a bit of a story by saying like, "Oh, when my grandmother had cancer, like we didn't tell her." And then Billy responds like, "So where's your grandmother now?" And then and then he says like, "Oh yeah, she passed away like a few years ago actually." And yeah, and then basically she asks, isn't it wrong to lie?" And then he says like, it's a lie for a good reason." And then she said, "Well, it's still a lie though." But then he says finally, "It's a good lie." So the next scene is in the waiting room, in which several of the family members, including the uncle, one of the uncles anyway, one of the main uncles, Billy's dad, Billy, and Nai Nai's sister, in which they're all, and basically it's Billy's dad just talking about maybe it's coming close, maybe it's time to actually tell her. And he remarks that saying in America you wouldn't be allowed to do this, and Billy also says like it would be illegal. And because of that, the uncle retorts and saying like, this isn't America, this is China, like this is how we do things here. And then Nai Nai's sister also says like, "Oh, I don't think it's not time to tell her yet, like it's not time to tell her yet." And Billy asks, "Well, how do you know?" And that's when the sister then says that she wouldn't be that Nai Nai wouldn't be mad about not telling her, because she did the same thing with her husband, who was also diagnosed with cancer. And in that sense, she only told him basically like just a short while before he passed away. And because of that, this tradition is pretty like, well, I guess has a solid foundation and a solid tradition. So basically when Nai Nai becomes sick or becomes close to death, that's the time they will tell her. So the next scene, obviously, after they check Nai Nai out of the hospital, they go back and they basically like just chill in her apartment for a bit, while Billy's dad and her uncle are like drinking, she's like busy playing piano, and there's like a lot of tenseness because of this, because there's a lot like Nai's talking with them about like the wedding, and then she's playing all like very loud classical music. It really builds this tense moment of like just when things might explode, I guess, but they don't in this scene at least. So interesting. And then the next scene, and then next it follows up with the end of that night, where Billy's dad is very obviously drunk.
Wasted.
He's very drunk, and he's like, you know, stumbling, and Billy's mom is helping obviously, and saying like, and she's like, and the mom is chastising her husband, saying like, you doing that, you overdid it again, like, here, let me help you. And Billy is very like embarrassed about this, like saying like, can we not do this right now, please? This is like not tonight. And then basically like they get him back into the room, and he's like basically asleep on the bed. And Billy basically says like, Nai should not be organizing this wedding, and that she should be in the hospital or resting. But then, what do you call it? Then Billy's mom just says like, look, if she wants to do it, then let her do it. Yeah, basically the reason that she says that is because, according to Billy's mom, Nai loves bossing everyone around, and she then recalls a point that's why she didn't like that, why grandma didn't like staying at their house in America, because she wasn't really the head of the house. It was those two. It was Billy's parents. So the whole time she was like really just like constantly feeling underpowered. And then eventually Billy just kind of snaps in a small way, saying like, look, I know you've had issues with grandma for a while, but like she's sick, like she doesn't really need this. And then her mom replied, look, it's not that I don't have a problem with her, she has a problem with me. Basically nothing I do is like ever good enough for her. And then afterwards, like, you know, she asks like, you know, should we be like, what do you want me to do exactly? Like, do you want me to cry and show all my emotions out like you? Then afterwards, then she says like, look, there is like, when my father died, like I was very sad, but I didn't really show my emotions out there. But when I went back to China to do the funeral, like to, you know, go to the funeral, everyone was expecting me to break down and lose my composure, but like I didn't. And it's pretty awful because, well, that's what she said. She says it's pretty bad because they expect you to do so, because if you don't, it implies that you don't love your family. And then she even lamented the fact that there's even a business in terms of like hiring professional criers at funerals to engage in that kind of performative grief. And she hated that. And then it cuts straight to the professional criers in the cemetery. Yeah, no, those criers were fantastically over the top. It's a very comedic scene in this like cemetery, where it's like they're doing the crying like and this is like another family, so like not related. But so then it cuts to our family, like the family we've been following, and it's like you can still hear the crying in the background, so it's very funny how the performative grief in the side. And then them is like, oh, we're giving because they visited the grave of Billy's grandpa, and as a result, like they're giving a bunch of offerings like for him to like food, alcohol, mostly food actually, and then including even cigarettes, which funny enough which grandma claims that he already quit. And then her son Billy's dad was saying like, no, he told you he quit, but no, he did it till the end. It's really fun. And then the uncle, Billy's uncle, is saying like, just let the man smoke, he's already dead, what else is gonna happen?
That is nuts.
It's hilarious. And then afterwards they just, you know, they get to praying like, oh, wish luck on your grandson's wedding, wish luck for Billy for her pursuits, wish luck for her sister to get rich at mahjong. And then they do this really comedic part where they bow like 3 times every single time they're asking for a blessing for one person. It's really, yeah, no, it's pretty funny. I really, it's a really funny scene. And then they continue when they're leaving the cemetery. They say, the grandma says, "I want my ashes to be scattered into the sea." And then the rationale they said is like, "We're Chinese. We believe that we should go back to the earth that we came from." Fantastic. Basically, Nai goes. They all go back. Nai goes to rest her feet, and Billy eventually goes up to like a different room that's clearly empty, but she sees her father and her uncle there, like they're smoking and drinking, and she thought that he quit, and he said like, "I did, I will." So and then she's like, don't give him cigarettes, and then he's like, don't, he's your father, don't try to control him. And then she asks like, "Oh, what are you guys talking about?" And then they say nothing. Then she asks, "Oh, are you gonna tell Nai?" And then her dad says, "I won't, Billy. I can't. Like, I would never go against my family." And then her uncle speaks up and says, "Billy, like, there are things that you need to understand. Like, you guys moved to the West like a long time ago. Like it's there, and over there, like everyone believes like they are, like every man is basically every man is an island type thing where everyone is a unique individual, that they don't, they exist, irrespective of other people. But he says in the East, every person is a member of the whole, is a part of the whole. And in this case, he says you want to tell Nai about her disease because you don't want to carry the responsibility by telling her that's what we, then says like, that's what we're trying to do. Like, we want to we're not telling her because it's our responsibility to carry the emotional burden of knowing that she is going to die." Yeah, that's fantastic. And then he just says, "Go back to bed." Next scene after that is basically in the room with Billy's cousin and his wife. Like, they're busy looking for her earrings, just trying to look for them. So they're like looking all over the floor. And Billy's mom and Billy are both in the same room, and they start talking, and with Billy start saying that she wants to stay in China with her grandmother. And Billy's mom and her mom is obviously saying like, "Well, why would you do that? What can you do? Like, you barely know how to handle yourself in terms of like money and stuff like that. You just don't, like, it's not a great idea." And then eventually it gets to the point where Billy discusses like how she really felt about like that move to China that they mentioned before, like saying like we had a lot of friends, we had family here, like I enjoyed it, it was good, but eventually, like, after we moved, everything was gone, everyone I knew was just not there, and it just vanished. And eventually, like, especially when she points out that when her grandfather died, she didn't even know, like, she wasn't even told that he died, not even allowed to like go to his funeral. Oh, and then her mom just says like, "You had school," but she doesn't Billy obviously feels like she didn't grasp like that, what that meant to her, where that eventually when she went back to China, as she says, like when Billy went back to China, she said like, "Now when I go back," like she mentions like few family members who have gone or moved away, and then places changed, building, like her neighborhood changed, like it wasn't the same as it used to be. She felt very alien from it in many ways, which also ties back to a bit of an earlier scene where the grandma commented on like, "Oh, this building used to be here, this park used to be there, but now it's like replaced with a bunch of buildings." So it really like hammers home like a level of alienation and a lack of belonging she feels. They found the earring, by the way. Afterwards, then finally the scene goes to the wedding. Finally, to the wedding reception, and it's basically throughout the whole time like everyone's there, all old associates, new people, cousins, etc. Like all come out for the wedding, so to speak. And throughout the time, Billy is basically also doing a lot of things that Nai basically advised her to do earlier in the movie, like showing like enthusiasm when meeting other family members, are also accept later on in the event, like accepting to do karaoke. She does karaoke with her dad, and throughout that whole time, everyone is trying to just enjoy the time, and it's very bittersweet in a sense because there's a lot of scenes throughout this thing where it's like people are enjoying having a good time, like playing interesting games that I've never seen before. But and but at the same time, like there are scenes when you can clearly see that people are the facade, I guess, is starting to crack quite a bit. Like with Billy's immediate uncle, he makes a whole speech in front, like thanking for everyone to come. But when he finally gets to acknowledging his the grandmother, his mom, he starts to basically break down a bit, or he starts to crack. He starts to cry and says like, "Hi mom, thank you like so much. Like you were the best mom ever." And he says, "I'm so sorry that I didn't get to spend enough time away from you. Like I spent too much time away from you." And it's a very heartfelt, beautiful speech. It's and but it's also in some ways, at least in my opinion, a little bit darkly funny because his mom has no idea why he cried. It's like, why is she crying so much? Like it's so weird. And yeah, and the whole time she also looks back on a few old acquaintances from the army. Like she talks to one of them, and he admits like, "Oh yeah, I used to have a big crush on you. You were back when you were in the army." And then they're all like, "Oh, he's drunk." Like he's just saying it like, "Oh, before I die, I might as well say it." It's fun in that way. And then eventually it climaxes a bit in the end where they take a whole family photo together and say at that time her grandson who's about to get married, like he's also having trouble keeping his composure about the truth, so he also ends up crying quite a bit. So in the wedding photo he's clearly very sad, and grandma was like, what's the problem? Is your wedding, like, you're not gonna be sad on your wedding? Why don't you just go smile more? Oh my god, it's so good. And yeah, they take that photo, and then along during that time, grandma also mentions like that they had after the latest after like they had a recent X-ray scan, and she sent a friend to pick up the results, and Billy hears this, and she starts rushing to the hospital, because obviously like if the friend gets it and finds out the secret, or gives the grandma the results, then it's gonna be for nothing. But it's quite surprising that she does it, considering how many times she's asked whether or not she can tell Nai about it.
Yeah, you mean Billy.
Billy, sorry, I mean Billy, yeah. It's surprising that Billy goes out of her way to try and keep the secret now, even though she's constantly asked other family members whether she should keep the secret from grandma. But she does it. She goes to the hospital and intercepts the person who got it, and then she asks the person who's a woman. Billy asks her, like, did you read the results? And then she says, I can't read, which was like, oh, big relief, at least for her. So she intercepts it, and then she gives it to like a Photoshop, I guess like store that helps change the results and say it's a benign spot and stuff like that. So she tries to do that. They do that, and then they get it in time, and they give it to grandma, and then she gladly does not know about the secret, which is a big relief for the family. But after that, it cuts to a shot where the whole family is walking together, all with very stoic faces, which has been done several times throughout this one. And Billy, for those other types of scenes, she always had a very clear face full of emotion, but now she has a face that's just as stoic as everyone else. She learned about this secret, and it hurts her, but at least in an unspoken way, she kind of understands why it has to be done. And she goes along with it, but it doesn't make it any less painful on the inside. Yeah. And this is the final scene of the movie where it's time for Billy and her family to leave. So they're packing up, and Grandma wants to obviously say a final goodbye to her. So she's even willing to go down all the stairs of the apartment building that she's in to do so. They do that, and they have a very tearful goodbye. And but before that, before they leave, Billy tells Grandma about her secret, the secret that she holds from everyone else, that she didn't get accepted into the Guggenheim like artist internship thing, and and she picked definitely, and judging from her grandmother's face, she actually, I think she picked the right time to say it, because instead of like chastising her or being stressed about it, she just says, don't worry, like it's hard, but you will get there in the end. Like, you'll definitely make it. Just keep on going. And it's really sweet. It's like one of the most like sweet parts of the movie, where in many ways like she becomes like she's just as warm as you'd imagine she would be. And at the end, before they leave in the taxi, like they have a good embrace, and it's hard for both of them to leave, because obviously obviously her grandma is Billy's grandma said that she's leaving and don't know when she'll be back. But for Billy, she's sad that it will be the last time that she sees her grandmother. So it's a very heartfelt like goodbye. And then there's a shot when they leave in the taxi, as they keep going, and then it zooms out a little bit and shows Billy and her mom in the back seat. And despite Billy's mom for the entire movie showing this very, I guess, very solemn, very stoic face, and talking about how she doesn't like showing her emotions, it's the first time she actually cries. And it's all in the fact that even though like she's been constantly burdened by expectations from Billy's grandmother, she can't help but still feel sad nonetheless. And it's a really vulnerable point in the movie, because as they fade out of view, then like I guess the grief kind of sets in, and it's heartbreaking. And then basically after that, the next scene is like Billy's back in New York. She's walking down some street, and then eventually she stops in the middle, and then she does the Tai Chi thing that she did with her grandma earlier, where it's like a ha. And it cuts to black, and then afterwards, it shows the Nai that this movie was based on, because it's a real story. If I haven't mentioned that yet, and that they did, and how it was based on a real, situation that happened, and that grandma still lives. I'm not exactly sure what that says thematically, but it definitely has a level of optimism to it, which is nice. But yeah, that is the end of the movie. Ka-chow. Hey guys, funny little costume change, because we're filming this like the next day after. But yeah, basically, so yeah, after all that plot, basically I want to talk about our overall opinion on the movie. And for me, I really loved it. I liked the themes, obviously, which we'll get into, but I also liked the way it was directed. It was really well shot. The cinematography is very static, I guess I would say. It's very static in terms of like trying to let scenes play out, because it's more of a character drama, which I really liked. I also really enjoyed the acting. Actually, the acting is very good as well, especially from Awkwafina. I would say her best performance actually, to date. Like I wish she could probably do more movies like this, ones with a little more, I guess, cerebral aspect to it, especially, or at least a deeper cultural significance. Yeah, no, and like it's paced very well. It's a character drama, but it doesn't drag. There's a lot of beautiful scenes, moments of emotion that I really connected to, and culturally also very, very interesting to learn about. And yeah, I'd say I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. That would be my rating. So how about you, Kong? What you think?
I wouldn't give a rating, but I really like the concept that they put out, and as well as how culture can really influence someone's thoughts on certain subjects. that's relevant to their daily lives. And also, I love how they portray grief and sorrow in the whole film, because there's different kinds of losses and how you, I guess, what you do to cope with those losses. And also, I especially like the scene where everyone, including Aquafina, walked out, like towards the end, where everyone just walked out, and it seems like she conformed to, even though she has her reservations regarding telling the truth to her grandma about the grandmother's illness, but then she also later on decided to join in with the family to not tell her
Yeah,
about
no,
the condition. Yeah.
she had some kind of understanding.
Yeah, she had, yeah.
No, that's no, absolutely, with all the stoic expressions and all
with
that.
all the story expression, yes.
No, yeah, that was
nice.
beautiful. Like, yeah, no, I loved all the the director's choice of shots.
Yeah.
Lulu Wang is her name, by the way. No, really, really good shots. Like a lot of, especially I like the shots with a lot of open space above it, which in my opinion, like kind of signifies like how much they're, like, I guess, like either like what they're like the amount of things that they're thinking, all that space is like used almost like representing all of the ideas in their mind that's hovering above them right now, which is really cool. No, I really like that. I tend to notice this trick a lot. I really enjoy. Yeah. But yeah, would you, yeah. But I also remember you told me like off screen, like this isn't really the type of movie you watch.
Yeah, it's a little bit slow paced. I prefer like anime or K-drama, which is like can be quite fast paced and very very action packed. Yeah, storyline.
But yeah, no, absolutely. No, I understand. Like it is like, it really is much more. It's not a plot driven movie.
No.
It really is a character driven movie. Like everything that happens in the movie is really driven by the decisions made by these people. And I like that they're all written they're all written so well. Like, even for ones you disagree with, even people who do certain things that you may think are not the smartest, it fits with their character. Because you know a lot about them, like how they act and what they do in response to certain things. It would say like, it's basically just a very layered and a very lived in like setting. Like all of these, like you can this family actually exists. You know, it feels like they feel like real characters. They're not just like, hypothetical people on the screen.
Yeah.
It's not like some superhero stuff or anything. No offense, but like, no offense, but like, yeah, it's dealing with some real serious issues that families would, like, the families like this would deal with. But at the same time, it shows like the love, the complications, and everything that comes with certain, like, with this family. And it's just, I really appreciated that level of realism, I guess. But yeah, next we're going to be talking about themes there. So there are like a bunch of themes that that are laid throughout the farewell. Like obviously the biggest one would be culture. When it comes to culture in terms of how Chinese people like deal with certain things, certain rituals, certain traditions, certain parts of life compared to how people in the United States do it. So obviously you're setting up with Billy as the main character. Like she's one who is, while she is Chinese, she is obviously much more American. And as a result, she has this level of, I guess, feeling like she doesn't understand like the entire premise of what the family is doing. Which in this case, the big thing in this plot obviously is how to carry this emotional burden of her grandmother's cancer diagnosis without telling and while not telling her. And it's an interesting one because it's one where she really doesn't get it, and throughout the entire movie, like she always keeps asking, when is it time to tell? When do you want don't you think it's better if she knows? Maybe she might not to do certain things before she dies. But everyone including her own parents, like say like that's just not how it works. I would like that would be too much responsibility to put on her, and it would give her a lot of stress and I guess a lot of trouble, a lot of and a huge, like they said, a huge emotional burden. And admittedly, I don't come from a culture that does that, but I do find it very. But by the end, I think I did understand it, and Billy did as well, especially like by the end, even though she probably didn't completely agree with the idea, she still did believe it was best for her family and her grandmother, which was, and the way they play it is so interesting because it's very ambiguous whether or not it was a good thing or not. But for them, it probably was, even if someone outside may feel a bit uncomfortable about it. Yeah, and especially this is seen like throughout like the movie. There's a lot of scenes interlaced in which Billy is constantly confronted about the differences in culture between of America and China. Like right from the beginning, like when she lands in China, she's like basically not harassed, but more like she's constantly like asked like I don't know what the word is. It's like
Bombard.
yeah, like there's like a bunch of like yeah, she was surrounded basically just by a bunch of taxi drivers who assumed that she was a foreigner. So immediately out the gate, even though she's from a place that she grew up, she's already treated as if she was an outsider. And then the second part is like when she moves into the hotel afterwards, when she first arrives, she's asked by the hotel manager about about different things about America, and especially the last question, like which do you think is better, the China or the United States? And she doesn't really give an answer. She no, she does give an answer. Like she doesn't give a definitive answer, not one or the other. She says they're just different. Like none of them are better than the other. They're just very different. Because and you could also relate that in many ways to like how she probably feels about it. Like she does fit very much she fits very much in America, but she's also longs for aspects of her childhood in China, where she talked about like she eventually talks about like the neighborhoods they used to go to, the people she had, the loved ones she had that she knew and cherished. So there's like an interesting, I guess empty space in the middle of it, where it feels like basically trying to get used to your new home, but also learn how to let go of your other one. So because of that, it ties into that Asian American experience of not quite feeling quite at rest. Like you're always wondering where do you actually belong. And there's a lot of Asian Americans who experience this, including other Asians. Even other Asians experience that as well. Like I do as well. I'm a Filipino, and I don't, and there's many instances in which I don't really agree with many traditional Filipino archetypes or rituals or certain practices that's just so commonplace. So I've always felt mixed feelings, I think, sometimes. Because in some ways I do really fit well in the West. Like I do sometimes feel actually quite a bit like Billy in that sense. I really do feel in many ways I fit with the West. Like from the music I like, some of the things I enjoy doing, my mannerisms. But in many ways I also can't say I'm like, completely removed from my Filipino background as well. Like I still primarily enjoy like obviously the culture. I enjoy the culture. I enjoy my language. I'm proud of my history. I'm proud of, a lot of aspects about where I'm from, but even boiling down to my food. No matter how long I stay in Australia, I'm never gonna get used to the idea of just having potatoes as my carbs. No, rice is number one. It will always be number one.
Yeah.
I'd say the movie also shows other aspects of how Chinese culture approaches death, or even like other things within Chinese folklore or religion that they believe in. Like they talk, like it shows like how they go to pray for loved ones who've already passed, and how they also go to them for prayer. They give them offerings, a lot of food, including in funny ways, including sometimes like habits they used to have, they poured alcohol and then cigarettes, even though they said he quit, but he didn't actually quit. So there's always a sprinkle a bit of humor in there, and I also really enjoyed especially how they focus they use they almost hint at the spiritual, like there's two times when Billy out of nowhere sees a bird in one of her rooms, and well, from what you told me, basically it's like basically could be a symbol of your ancestors.
Yeah, it could be maybe your ancestors are visiting you, or they are telling you something's happening, or it could be a bad omen. Who knows? But for Billy's case, it could be her grandpa who's telling her, oh, her grandma's not doing well or something like that. I'm not too sure, but it could be something similar. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, no, yeah, see, I like that. Considering the movie is pretty grounded overall, they don't really hint of a lot of spirituality throughout this one, but I feel like when you told me that during the movie, or not sure, well, during the movie and also afterwards, I like that. It almost it dares you to even put yourself in that kind of tradition to even believe that it's true, which is interesting, especially this next part, this other part of context in which the director, she's an Asian American woman, and I can see especially how the way she directs it showcases, I guess going back to that that dissonance of not belonging. She does showcase all these little aspects of Chinese culture, from the way they eat, from the way they grieve, from the way they pursue certain values. It's all quite authentic, but the way it's shot is always very clinical. It's from a distance. It's always showcasing it also helps show the scenery or the setting, but it also, and sometimes also communicating what characters are thinking. But I also feel there's a little bit of distance that it has from the culture that it's looking at. So I found that just very, very fascinating. And I'd say one of the big parts, especially through a lot of these interactions, the themes of death are very much tied into the themes of family and responsibility, because there's a really important line that was said a bit later in the movie by Billy's uncle, where he says, you guys in the you have to understand, you guys in the West, you think every person is to oneself. They are only everyone is only for their own way, for themselves. But in the East, we're all a part of a whole, and especially in a family, in this case, which makes a lot of sense, because they said, eventually he follows it up by saying, you want to tell grandma, he's telling this to Billy, but he said you want to tell grandma only because you want to remove the responsibility of carrying the burden, because that's our job. The family is supposed to carry that emotional burden for her, so that way she lives her, well, he doesn't say this part, but she gets to live her last days without worry, which I found really quite enlightening, I guess. I mean, and especially it's echoed throughout the movie. That's obvious. Before that one very definitive statement, before they do kind of hint at it throughout. One of her aunts asks, in response to Billy asking, shouldn't we tell her? And then her aunt responds, why would we? Well, why? What good will that do? And then even if saying good, and she also says saying goodbye that's so stressful. Why would you want her to do that? And then even people outside of the family, her doctor said, a lot of families do this, and even no one had to tell him to lie. They just knew. But the fact that he found out that that she was dying, he just went with it without question, which is interesting. Even transcending family boundaries, it's a very much a widespread societal thing. That's how it seems to me. Lastly, I kind of wanted to talk about I guess the centerpiece of the movie, the one big scene the one big dinner scene, which is very obviously very central to the idea of culture and family, because because basically it's just a giant dialogue. It's a giant dialogue between aunts, uncles, and cousins and different people about the value of where they come from, what they've become, about who they identify as, and especially like how one views their own history and identity both before and later on. Like there's like so many interesting spots. Like I guess I would start with, and there's like one of the big starts with when they ask Billy a lot, or they talk about Billy and her parents, how they moved to when they moved to America, and you know the different and how they see that kind of in value of kindness in the pastor, giving them a key to help, like basically let Billy practice piano whenever she wants. She like for her mom, for Billy's mom, I mean, she feels like that signifies America. Like that's a central part of America. How showing being open and trusting one another is kindness. And Billy comes back and says, "No, mom, that's not really representative of the United States. Like there's way more problems that are around." Like she touches on them. She says guns and healthcare. They don't really get into it because then her mom comes back and saying with a very passive aggressive one, may I add, like, well, it's so bad, then why don't you live here then? And then some of her Billy's other aunts come in and say, hey, like not a lot of things are like, there's not a lot of bad things in China. We're not so useless. There's a lot of things we can do and that are worth it. And then Billy's mom, again, very passive aggressive, like she says, well, the roast duck's pretty good, pretty cheap, implying a level of tension. I think there's a level of cultural disagreement, that she is quite much her own person, and the way that she does things doesn't necessarily fit in China. But it also is interesting, doesn't fit in America either, actually, because Billy, and eventually, like after the dinner scene, she eventually talks to Billy, and she mentions how when she came back to see her dad's funeral, they expected her to cry, which she felt was not really what she does when it comes to grieving. And then same thing, but at the same time, she has mentioned the United States, that she doesn't just show all of her emotions either. So in many ways, so it shows both in a way how those two cultures are overlap in this one instance, and she doesn't, in terms of how they show grief, and she doesn't fit either way, which was, yeah, that was just really sick. I actually noticed that just now. and then yeah, it keeps, and then there's other conversations throughout this time where Billy's dad eventually talks about basically responds to his grandmother, because Billy's grandmother says, no matter where we are, no matter what, we can't criticize China because we are all Chinese. And then yeah, Billy's dad says, well, we're Americans technically. and then what do you call it? Billy's dad's brother comes and says, speaks up and says, it doesn't matter. Like, no, for me, it doesn't matter. I am always going to be Chinese, no matter what passport I hold. And everyone does agree but it's implied to different levels, obviously, because even Billy's parents agree, but they agree in their own way, in my opinion. But at the same time, what else this shows, I think, as well, is that in terms of cultural differences, it really shows in the tense discussions between Billy's mom and another aunt who came and who talks about sending her child to the United States for college, even though she lives in China. And Billy's mom basically tries to like, why do you send them there? To look for, and she responds, to look for opportunity. Well then what? And then, well then what if he chooses to stay there? And then she says, nah, he'll come back. But then Billy's mom finally ends it with like, you sure about that? Basically, you sure about that? Which means like even implying that, and that aunt doesn't really respond because she does know it's true. Like even if her son would be very like culturally Chinese, it doesn't mean that he'll stay that way forever. like Billy. And yeah, no, it's just really, I would say, it really shows the fractures within the family in terms of differences, and especially a lot of bitterness underscoring it. Like one of them, another aunt talks about, actually no, the same aunt talks about, if the grass is, the grass is greener, or in her sense, she said, if the moon is rounder outside China, then don't you feel bad about leaving, the grandmother here all alone, without her, growing old and alone without her children to be there, which is a very tense moment in there, and no one says anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
leaving a lot of these I guess differences very, I guess, unanswered, you would say. But interestingly, despite all that, it is still, in so many ways, it shows that they still do kind of pull for each other. Like when it comes to the hospital, when it comes to seeing her grandma in the hospital, or especially working together to keep that secret. Like when, I guess, when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, they still do what's right. Like these conflicts will never probably will be there for a long time. Probably won't even heal ever. But they do also know what's important. Like these squabbles are nonetheless between like, that's us. But we're talking about the whole as a family. This is our first discussion. It's very all over the place, honestly. We honestly didn't script this video or anything, but it was very. But yeah, we really wanted to try and make one that we felt that we could both connect to in a certain way. And I don't know. We hope you guys found something interesting about it as well. And if you liked what we did, please like, share, hit the subscribe notification bell. This video was not sponsored by anyone. But thanks guys. Yeah, I'm Carlos and this is Kong. Well, we'll see you guys later.